Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another evening of jazz at the NCPA. As you know, over the last 3 years, there's been a lot of jazz activity that's taking place at the NCPA along with Jazz Addicts. We've had 3 major jazz festivals and a number of standalone concerts over the last 3 years. Well, what we have tonight is something unique. As you know, when jazz music is played, the musicians are telling you some kind of a story. Well, tonight we have a person who's going to tell us a story about how the music developed. His name is Rajiv Raja. He's a very fine flute player and a great innovator. And he, along with a band of quite distinguished musicians from New York and Los Angeles, Tokyo, elsewhere, are going to tell us about the development of jazz. I'll let Rajiv introduce the musicians to you, but enough to tell you that there's going to be an intermission after about 45 minutes, a short intermission. So the evening is going to be divided into 2 halves. Please welcome Rajiv Raja.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Jazz Back to the Future, a trip up memory lane. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to the wonderful musicians that are on stage. We have Pawan Benjamin on saxophone, Hideaki Tokunaga on guitar, Aki Spadaro on piano, Marco Zenini on bass, and Michael Mitchell on drums, not forgetting Jocelyn Medina, who will be joining us shortly. A big hand for her, please. Yeah. Okay, so a lady once went up to Louis Armstrong and asked him, "What is jazz?" And he said, "Lady, if you ever gotta ask, you ain't ever gonna know." Now, what Louis didn't say, and this is how, various critics and dictionaries have attempted to define jazz, a type of music of Black American origin, which emerged at the beginning of the 20th century, characterized by improvisation, syncopation, and usually a regular or forceful rhythm. Brass and woodwind instruments and piano are particularly associated with jazz. Now, if Louis had told the lady this definition, I don't think she'd have been running to the next jazz concert. Because jazz, like life, has to be experienced. It's a living, breathing art form, and it has to be experienced. So let's start with some experiencing. Wasn't that something? Okay, we're a little ahead of time here. To truly understand what jazz is, we have to go back to its origins, to its roots, and how it evolved down the years. It all began in USA back in the 1600s when the import of African slaves started happening to the southern states in America. And they used to work in the cotton plantations, and those of you who've seen 12 Years a Slave would understand the conditions under which they worked. Now, the music prevalent in America at the time was the work of the masters, the classical masters, Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, etc. And this is how it sounded. I think it's a bit too classical for him. Okay. So the slaves, on the other hand, heard another song. You know, they heard songs of lament of their wives, their mothers, their children back home. Sadness and nostalgia tinged with freedom and hope. And in their singing, there was a particular note that they kept coming to. And this note really was not expressed in the Western music of the time. And this was called the blue note, right? And the blue note really is a note that they would glide into and they would touch upon, much like our gamakas of Indian classical music, which was unheard of in those days. And the term "I'm feeling blue today" actually came from this, from the blues and from this blue note. So let's try and understand this blue note. How many people can sing in this audience? Everybody can, because you're going to now. Okay, right? Okay, so let's take what is called the C major scale, right? Hideaki? Play the C major scale.